The Wellness Show, Episode 64.
Welcome to The Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyson Bannigan, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more. So welcome to the Wellness Show. I have Jane waiting on the call from Australia. And tonight we're going to talk about ancestral healing. And the first question is, how did you come about with this work?
Well, basically, I had a lot of baggage from my childhood, and I had a lot of resentment and a lot of issues with my mum. And when I became a young adult and I married my husband, I realised that I had work to do. I had to stop blaming everybody else. We had young children, and I was so aware of this toxic burden of resentment that I was carrying, and I was blaming everybody else for my problems, and I just felt so awful. I couldn't stand myself. I had such a low sense of worth. And so I was so against God, and I was really in a black hole. And I guess it took a crisis to give me a big wake-up call. So I started looking into spirituality, and that was just wonderful. That opened up a whole new world to me. But it was really only in recent years, say in the past decade, that I've been travelling to India, and I've started looking, and where the Eastern cultures are very aware of their ancestral history, and they really emphasize the importance of acknowledging and respecting their ancestors. And I started realizing that a lot of the problems, a lot of the issues that I was facing in my life, I just knew that they weren't mine alone. And I started communicating with my ancestors, and I really felt that connection. And it's been an incredible journey, but it's been so healing and so transformational and so enlightening. Like, we're so much a product. It's not just about us alone. We are a continuum of the consciousness of our ancestors. We inherit their karma or their lessons. Like, karma's a teacher. It's not a punishment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And yeah, I started recognizing that the stuff I was going through had to be coming from, it just wasn't from this lifetime. And it's just been the most incredible journey. It's so beautiful.
So how did you learn to get in touch with your ancestors? It sounds like you're almost, if I'm understanding you, you're almost starting to have a conversation with them.
Exactly. That's where it all started. It was just started with awareness of them, because I used to think, why bother with my ancestors? They're dead and gone. I'm worried about the now. And then I realised that's actually very insulting to them, because they are a very powerful living presence and force. And they're watching, if they want to, they can watch us from the other side. And they can have quite a big influence in our lives, positive or negative, depending on whether they're happy with us. So I started opening up to them and simply doing that, just connecting with them in my heart. And I started taking interest in terms of finding photos of them. And my dad was alive then, so talking to my dad about it. And amazingly, just things came to me from unexpected sources, information about my family history. And I had a few experiences with peeved ancestors coming to me where they were angry. They were still holding on to their experiences, their hurts, being undervalued, unappreciated. And it was holding them back on the other side. It was keeping them stuck. And then it was flowing on to us as a family and affecting the same issues that they had were affecting us. So it's really profound. And the beauty of it is it's so easy, it's so simple, there's nothing complicated about it. And when I experienced these messages, and I'm not psychic at all, but they just came to me, and there was such a beauty in the ability to communicate with a grandfather or a great-grandfather or a grandmother who was so sad because they felt like they'd been forgotten. And to have that avenue of communication was so healing on both for them and for me, and really ultimately for the whole family lineage. Like it flows to, the healing flows to past, present, and future generations. So I've shed so many tears when I've communicated with my ancestors, and they haven't been tears of sadness. They've been tears of beauty, tears of love, because I've felt the love and gratitude that has come to me as in response to being aware of them and opening up to their presence. So it's a very simple and easy thing to do.
So did you find that any of your ancestors were actually stuck in this side in the ghost or in the distant, were there entities that were existing as entities, or have they all been able to transition to the other side?
Well, as far as I know, they'd all been able to transition to the other side. But from my understanding of it, they say that there's many realms when you pass over. And my understanding was they were stuck in the lower realms and our ancestors can be stuck for so many reasons, but one of them is the condition of the circumstances around their death. Absolutely. And also if they're still holding.
Yeah, some of them, in my experience, because I'm an exorcist of possession, some of them get stuck and don't even know that they've died. And some of them have so much resentment because they weren't able to finish what they felt they should, that they want to stick around to do that. And some of them are stuck in the lower astral, like you're saying, because they're being held back in their own spiritual growth because they've got unfinished business or resentment. And really they're looking for you to help them clear that karmic lineage so they can get on. So what you've come to and what you're teaching is extremely important, particularly in our Western culture, because we have no background teachings around this whatsoever. So it doesn't surprise me that you went to India and had this aha about how important ancestors were. So what was it in India that gave you that aha? Can you remember?
Yes. Well, I was in the temple. I go to the Oneness University, and I was in the temple, and my grandfather came through, and his wife actually died at Mum's birth. So he didn't raise my mother. Mum was adopted. Mm-hmm. And he came through me, and he was so upset. He felt so undervalued. He felt like he'd been dismissed by the family. He'd been denied raising his daughter. And I don't know the circumstances around it at all, but this was how he felt. He was so angry. And I just shed so many tears, and I apologised because we never even told Mum was adopted. So it was though he didn't exist. I always knew intuitively, but it was as though he was just non-existent. And he was still holding on to that, like 70 years later or probably 80 years later. And when I was able to hear, from my understanding, they just want to be heard. Yeah. And from that, it opened up a whole understanding for me, and I apologised and communicated. And I was so touched because I don't know anything about him, and just to have that connection with my grandfather, my biological grandfather, meant so much. And it was like a release. It was a huge release that happened there, an enormous healing. He'd been heard, he'd been validated, and he then moved on up into he wasn't stuck. He then was able to move on up into the higher realms.
So of any of your ancestors, have they become your guides?
Well, I'm not sure, but I have a grandmother that is who I also never knew, who I knew I had a strong connection with her, and she had a very difficult life. A lot of our grandmothers, great-grandmothers, a lot of them fell pregnant out of wedlock. Yes. And because they didn't have contraception, and women, it was so different back then for women. Sometimes it was difficult for them to set boundaries because they had to pay the consequences, and there's so many different factors. But so we all would have mothers, grandmothers, great-grandmothers who carried a lot of shame. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother came through to me because I'd been carrying a lot of shame from unknown origin, and she came through, and she was still carrying the shame of falling pregnant out of wedlock and having to marry my grandfather hastily. And she was ostracised by the family. And so I think a lot of us are carrying that guilt and shame around sexuality and we don't even know why. And having that experience with her was profound. I cried so much for weeks after, every time I thought of her. And I feel now that she's a tremendous ally, because a lot of my issues in my life have been to do with the wounded feminine, and that's I'm sure that's because of my wounded feminine ancestry, and it's my karma, it's for my learning and growth. So I definitely feel a very strong connection with her, but I'm not really, I can't see her, I just sense that she's with me.
Well, that's very, very powerful. The ancestral lineage aspect from the Tao, which I'm involved in, is really quite powerful because, like the North American or the Native Indians, and probably in many indigenous cultures, they say that, karmically, that when you clear or you deal with an issue that is ancestral, that you're clearing 7 generations into the past in your lineage and 9 generations into the future. So I find that, we're up around 27,000 souls that you are guided to if you show up in this lifetime and know that you signed up, to help do the lineage clearing. That's a powerful, powerful awareness that brings about incredible freedom for so many souls. I mean, that's a huge number. And so that's exciting once you understand that, and you understand that this is really powerful work and a powerful body of information to communicate to other people. So you were saying that it really has affected your family. So can you give me some ideas about how it's affected your family and your family relationships?
Look, my relationship with my husband is so good now, and we had a very rocky start early in our marriage. We've been married over 30 years. Interestingly, my daughter said to me that she felt like she was carrying a lot of shame before I had this experience with my grandmother. And I see my daughters really blossoming into very healthy, well-grounded, beautiful women. In terms of the bigger, like my relationship with my dad before he died was just beautiful, and he only died under a year ago. I've got a lot of family stuff, like all of us, but it's certainly made a big influence on my direct family in terms of the flow of money too. I think if we have, like my grandfather felt undervalued because he worked really hard, earned a lot of money, and been very successful, and passed on a wonderful family legacy that, from my understanding, wasn't appreciated. Well, it might be my great-grandfather. And that he came to me, and just recognizing that opens the way for abundance to flow. So in so many areas of my life, the ancestral work that I've done has had an enormous influence, personally, first and foremost, on me. I'm just in awe, actually, at the shifts and changes that have happened. Yeah. Some of my family members aren't on the journey, so yeah.
Well, they'll come a little later, but I mean, it sounds like you're on the leading edge of this as in your family and helping everybody up to wake up to the truth of it. I know for myself, I has really split in my beliefs around my family. I'm 3rd generation, I like to say the black sheep of the black sheep of the black sheep of Irish descent from, Providence, Rhode Island, and a Roman Catholic, on and on. So I changed my name, in the 70s as a hippie. I just changed my name. And it's only been in the last, I would say, year that I've really come to terms with this, how powerful it is. I was born into a lineage. I had responsibilities, obligations. I didn't see the contract that I signed, but, I'm here to do the work that has to do with my lineage. So part of that was to take back my name, maybe not on paper, but certainly energetically. And so I've been working with my great-grandfather and understanding the gifts, particularly in the area of prosperity that you're talking about, of the gifts that he has and that what he brought to the new world at that time. He was the first philanthropist and the first millionaire in in Rhode Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island. And so I have a legacy that goes way, way back that I can pull on and understand when I respect that. And to think that I spent so much time rebelling against that because I didn't understand it. And I don't think I'm the only one that's doing that. So, coming to terms with our lineage is really, for some of us, not easy, but as you say, the value in doing that is really, really releasing for not only you, but for everybody in your family. So how do you do this? Have you come up with a methodology? You said it was rather easy. I mean, everything's easy once you know how to do it. But do you take people on a guided meditation? What sort of ways do you approach this with your clients?
Well, with my clients, I do mainly do guided soul journeys. So we do meditation and we connect at the soul level with our ancestors. So I do a lot of work on healing the heart, and then we travel to the soul realms and we call in the souls of our ancestors. So and that is so beautiful. So often my clients become emotional and teary at the experience, at the love that comes to them. But on a more practical basis, I talk about, like, I've got a little altar. In my treatment room, I have an altar where I've collected photos of ancestors. But it doesn't even know if you don't know anything about them or you don't have any photos. It's just a matter of, say, maybe lighting a candle, or not even doing that, just calling them in and holding your awareness of them in our heart center, in your heart, and really offering respect and acknowledging them, because many of them, but the times were so different. They came from such difficult times where the conditions were very, very different to what we're experiencing now. And one of the things that was bluntly shown to me was that a lot of things that I was having, that I was really stressing over, to them was so trivial. It was so self-indulgent because of what they experienced in their lives. So that was a big wake-up call for me, actually. And so it's just a matter of having that heartfelt connection. Really, it's an intention to call them in and speak to them. Just speak to them inwardly and really and make it a regular practice as much as you can. I like to do it daily, every day. I just even momentarily.
No, that's quite a commitment. That's an amazing commitment. I've never really thought of doing it daily. I haven't even thought of doing it monthly. So yeah, I that makes a lot of sense to me. So having worked with clients and yourself, what is one of the most profound experiences that you had in an ancestor showing up either in your life or one of your clients' lives? Can you give people some idea of what the profundity of what this can be?
Well, this is actually, the most profound experience I've ever had was fairly recently, and it was with my mother. So my mother is, I don't know if your mother's considered an ancestor or but definitely she's my direct bloodline.
Yes.
And what I saw, as I said, I had a lot of issues with my mum, and we were doing a meditation in India where we were looking at obstacles that were preventing us to fulfill our highest destiny. And what I saw was that all the anger and resentment and hurt and lack of gratitude, lack of appreciation, all the blame that I had projected out onto my mother had come back at me, came straight back at me, and was the cause of every single problem in my life. And that to me was the most profound vision I've ever seen, because even though I'd been working on my relationship with my mum for decades and I really felt pretty free, I saw without doubt how much I had been the creator of all my problems, all the issues in my life. And I saw that the womb was very sacred, pregnancy was very sacred, motherhood was fatherhood, but for me, my issues were with my mum. Motherhood was sacred. My mother carried me in her womb. Her blood flowed through every cell and atom of my body, oxygenated my body, and I was so against her. And the damage that caused to me, the self-harm, it was like cutting my own wrists. And right. That was my most profound experience.
Wow, that's powerful. When I think of India and going there and the flow of, Shakta and Shiva and Vishnu and the whole flow of what I would call, the Kundalini psychosexual, juicy Kundalini experience that's everywhere. Sexuality is not something in India that's separate. It's, it's everywhere. It's part of life. And that juiciness, that we deny ourselves in our culture because of whatever our belief systems or traditions or whatever our ancestors believe. When we allow ourselves to have those feelings and that they are sacred and they're part of being on this planet, really does free us. And for you to come to terms with all of that with your mother and realize that she had a soul contract to really help you stand in your own divinity and your own truth. And that she played her role so magnificently for you to get that message, and there was no other way you could get the message than for her to be so almost dogmatic in her presence in your face so that you would get it. It does leave us with nothing but compassion for the sacrifice that they have to make in their incarnation to play that role of being our teacher in that deep, profound way. And it must be difficult for them to see how much resentment we have before we understand what the lesson is. Yes. I know it was for me, I had a lot of resentment about my mother too. And to come to realize that it was the lesson that I needed to learn, and she was there to teach me that I needed to stop looking for that love that outside of myself from my mother in the way that I thought it should be delivered, but look inside of myself and love myself unconditionally. That was a big one for me, to come to that realization and release my mother so my mother could get on with her own soul growth and her own evolution. Really, really powerful. So you this just on a one-to-one basis, or do you do it in a group coaching setting as well, or how do you do that?
I'm actually starting. I've done group coaching here in Adelaide, but mainly I do it one-on-one on Skype now. But I'm starting a group program actually in a few weeks' time. So I've got a webinar coming up, and then from that I'll be launching a program that will be online and it will be recorded. So I'm really excited about that actually, because I would just want to get this work out in a much bigger way.
Yes.
And groups is the way to go.
So for that webinar, could you go on to the the Facebook page, which is the Wellness Show, and post it there, so anybody listening to this that would like to participate knows how to get hold of you in that sense, when you're ready to launch that. Do you know what the dates are yet, or you're still working on that?
My webinar's on this Wednesday, my Wednesday, which is, if you're on the US, it's your Tuesday. It's 5 p.m.
Right.
Pacific time.
Yeah, this probably won't come out until after that. So are you going to do any more after that?
I'll definitely be doing more after that.
Okay, great.
But then
so you'll post that in the Facebook group so people can catch up and participate. So when's your launch date after that, after the webinar? Do you have a program launch date, or?
No, I haven't decided. It'll be a couple of weeks.
All right. Okay, good. So let us know when that is in the Facebook group. So yeah, this is really, really important work. And so how many are you thinking of having in the group? Is it open-ended, or is it going to be a small group, or?
I'm thinking it'll probably be, no, it's not open-ended. I think it'll be about 20 or so. Yeah.
That's about right.
Really yeah. I don't want people to get lost in a big group. That won't be happening. I'm going to be very much, they can communicate with me, and it's, yeah.
So I got to ask you this question. Are you going to write a book all about this?
That's funny. Somebody told me I would be writing a book one day. Not at the moment, but I was thinking that yesterday. This is so important. I'm just a bit wary about sharing all my personal stuff. That's all. Well, it is such a deep.
But that's how people really, without you sharing your personal story, people can't find you. It's you and your story that's going to resonate with so many people that if you don't show up and tell your story, they can't find you. They're waiting for you so they can release themselves. So you got to be brave and just go for it. Warts and all, just put it out there, and that's the way it is. So yeah. So I would think that by doing this, a group, with people's permission, you'll have a lot of opportunity to talk about it from different perspective. You could get some of that even, in the form of testimonials. You could even get some of it transcribed. It seems to me that it would be relatively effortlessly to put it into a book once you're finished doing this a number of group sessions. You have all sorts of different perspectives, all sorts of different viewpoints. Sounds like a great book to me.
Great idea. Thank you for that.
I can't help it. I'm a coach. So, the whole idea of encouraging people to, especially when it's their passion, I can see this as your passion. I mean, you've come to this, and this has been a tremendous release for you, and you're learning so much from it. So what are some of the hot tips that you've learned in this whole thing that you'd like to share with everybody?
Number one is take responsibility for your life. Don't blame anybody else. It's so toxic. It's so toxic. Honor your parents, respect your ancestors, and communicate with your ancestors. That's a big one. We all have a team of allies on the other side who want to help us, who want to support us. So open up that avenue of communication. And we're so lucky, we're so blessed to be living in these times, because our foremothers and forefathers didn't have the freedom and the opportunities that we have. So we owe it to them and to ourselves to move forward and heal the past and embrace life.
Yeah, and heal the planet in the process. Yeah, I agree with you. Our ancestors were so busy trying to put, the bread on the table and food for the kids. It was not easy. We have the luxury of deciding whether we want to do spiritual growth or do whatever. They didn't have those luxuries. And if it is a soul contract, and if we did sign up to clean this up for our lineage, then now's the time. And if not now, then when? And it seems to me that the more we could spread this message, the cleaner that we can clear up the trauma that's locked into the planet, that will help us make the next quantum shift in consciousness. It really is cleaning up and owning our own drama and trauma, that it begins and ends with ourselves, even though we really don't want to own up to that, because it's so much easier to blame. Well, yeah, for me, that's a big one. It's still something to always keep learning, right? So,
definitely.
Yeah, it never ends.
That's right. It's a never-ending journey.
The never-ending journey that goes deeper and deeper and deeper. So, has your daughter had children yet?
We have one grandson.
Oh, great.
Yes.
So already this is going to go down the lineage. So just imagine how much easier it will be for your grandchildren, that they don't have to go through all this, and that it will become second nature to understand how to own all their own feelings and emotions, and how to process them, work with them, and release them, because they'll have a grandmother that knows how to do that and teach them. That's pretty profound too.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting relatively close to the end of the show. And so how do people get hold of you?
My website is Quantum Coaching with Jane, and I have a Facebook group of the same name. Plus, I have a Facebook group called Clearing Relationship and Ancestral Blocks to Self-Worth, Love and Fulfilment.
Oh, that's a long one.
That is a long one. I put more of my energy into that Facebook group than the other.
Oh, that's great. And I forgot, is it closed? Did you say it was closed, or is it open?
No, it's closed.
It's closed.
It's a closed group.
Yeah. So can people that are on this call, can they apply, or do they need to be part of your course?
No, they can apply. It's for anybody.
Great. And so do you answer questions there?
I do.
Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
So It's a great place to come and learn more about what you're doing and how to apply it.
And it's a safe place. It's a wonderful community of mainly women, but there's a couple of men in there as well. Men are welcome also. Right.
So have you had any male clients, or men starting to cotton on to this?
Not one-on-one clients. I have had one in my group program that I did a while back, which I did live, in a community centre. But I do target women because of my own experience. Yeah. But I certainly am very open to working with men also. If a man, because we both need this healing as much as each other, because the masculine and feminine is so damaged. So I would love to work with men if they want to, although my marketing is directed towards women.
Right. Well, we're near the end of the show, and it's been a pleasure to talk with you on a very important subject called ancestral healing and how to live and accept emotions that you have, how to process them, release yourself, and from all this backstory that most of us until now have been overwhelmed by it. So thank you. And as you get further on and ready to write that book, you're going to have to come back and talk about that new launch of that book that you're about to write.
I will. Thank you so much, Tyson. It's been great. Thanks.
Thank you for coming on the show, and I look forward to talking to you again. Bye-bye for now.
Okay. Bye-bye.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.